Okay, well, welcome to PeopleSoft Chatbots, use cases for financial and supply chain. If that's what you're looking for, you are in the right session. My name is Cameron McClurg. I'm from SpearMC, and I'm glad to spend a few minutes with you today. Unfortunately, I have a half an hour, so while this is Reconnect Dive Deep, we're not going to dive very deep today because I don't have a lot of time, but I will give you my contact information here and happy to have a conversation with you outside of this venue so we can spend a little bit more time talking. So my background, I've been doing PeopleSoft for a long time, but not always as a consultant. Most of my time I've been spending within organizations as a full-time employee, whether that was doing business analysis or eventually leading support teams and then the entire financial systems area. In my last job, 3.5 years ago, I hopped the fence and came over to the consulting world and joined SpearMC. SpearMC was my consulting partner at the time, and doing PeopleSoft work with them at my place of employment. And I joined them. I'm actually not based in Seattle anymore. I'm actually based in Southern California. I moved from Seattle to Southern California this year. And but my phone number and email address is still the same. I do have certifications with PeopleSoft, OCI, and also I did Hyperion work in my former life as an employee, and we've done a little bit of work here at SpearMC. So SpearMC, if you haven't heard about us, and I'm assuming most of you probably have because we've had a ton of presentations here at this conference, and we do a lot in the PeopleSoft space. We're all about PeopleSoft, whether that is from a functional perspective, rolling out new modules and new functionalities, services, including ongoing managed services, whether that's technical or functional development, all of that managed services stuff that relates to PeopleSoft, hosting on Oracle Cloud infrastructure, emerging technology, and that's today we're going to be talking about chatbots and Oracle Digital Assistant, but we also were involved in things like Kibana. We also did a presentation yesterday on Oracle Guided Learning, which is a brand new technology being used to help people with the learning paths within PeopleSoft, kind of replacement for UPK. So we are involved in pretty much anything related to PeopleSoft licensing as well. Everything that's involved. We want to be comprehensive to any needs from a PeopleSoft perspective. So that's really our bread and butter, and we've been very happy to be recognized by Gartner this year for our work with PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud infrastructure. So we are in the 2021 market guide for Oracle professional services on PeopleSoft on OCI, and that's a reflection of kind of our investment in PeopleSoft. While some of our competitors decided to move away from PeopleSoft in the recent years, and you probably felt that from the partner ecosphere, where some people aren't doing PeopleSoft work much anymore. We said, you know what, we're going to fill that gap. We're going to reinvest. We're going to double down on PeopleSoft, and as well integrating new technologies into PeopleSoft and really helping people with their overall roadmap of leveraging their investment in a licensed software like PeopleSoft, this robust, sort of very comprehensive enterprise resource planning software, but then integrating, new technologies, whether that's Oracle Digital Assistant we're going to talk about today, or cloud hosting, all these other things that will help them move with their cloud strategy while still leveraging their licensed software with PeopleSoft. We really feel that's a great strategy, and it really has paid off. As I mentioned, we've done a bunch of presentations at this conference. We're coming down the stretch here to the very end. We do have a great session on getting chatbots production ready from yesterday. If you want to hear more about that, that's done by my colleague Logesh, who he and I work together closely on chatbots. Great session from yesterday. Actually was hearing a good session this morning from Joe Huang from Oracle on, and that was very much a dive deep into code and that sort of thing in ODA. We won't be going into that much detail. We're going to talk more about today about higher level about the chatbots, where we're at in the process of rolling out chatbots with Oracle, and spend some time talking about the financials use cases. All right. So brief history of conversational interfaces. These have been around forever. So we've got, obviously a telegraph up in the left corner here. We've got IBM Shoebox. We've got Eliza from MIT, which was trying to predict what people were saying. And then in pop culture, we have a game called Oregon Trail, if anybody's familiar with that. It's a popular game where you typed in what you wanted to do as these pilgrims were moving, or settlers were moving from East Coast to the West Coast, and pretty much anything you did, you ended up dying of dysentery, which was kind of the funny thing about Oregon Trail. But anyway, the point is that there's always been this sort of desire to use natural language to interact with some kind of computing or software resource, and these have just been evolving over time. And so the idea of conversational interface is not new. This has been around for a long time. It's just sort of changing in its form. So a conversational interface is really simply just an interface for computers that emulates a conversation with a real human. The idea is that instead of the user, the human, learning how the computer works, it's supposed to come the other way, which is the conversational interface is designed to understand and to interact with the way, the natural language of what the user is saying. So it's kind of a paradigm shift in terms of how the interaction is happening, designed to really support, again, the natural language of the user. So there's always this sort of interpretation of the intent of the person. This is using a natural language processor, NLP, to understand the intent of the person. Once you understand that intent, you're basically flowing into a preset dialogue flow. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about Alexa, or we're talking about a chatbot here, or we're and there's Alexa telling me as I say Alexa's trying to interact with me. Well, that's a good embarrassing sort of thing, but anyway, that's a good example of how we always have these things around us and they're trying to interact with us. It's great. All right, but bottom line is, as these things match a dialogue flow, they try to retrieve information and translate that back into conversational response for us. This is the same flow of every single one of these, regardless of what we're talking about. PeopleSoft Chatbots are no different. So the idea here is that really the goal here is to reduce friction. So let's think about a real example here. This is actually an HCM example, but bottom line is, normally if a user has to come in and enter some sick time, they're going to come in, they're going to open a navigator if they know how to go to the right spot. They try to find the self-service, they kind of poke around, they finally stumble onto time reporting, maybe say, well, I think I probably should click on this report time. They got to request absence, they select absence, type sick, they type in the date from and to and hit submit. And usually what the traditional model for this is that a lot of end user training is needed, meaning we create guides and we hand those out to people. We tell them, hey, if you want to do this, hey, make sure you go do this. And maybe we can do really fancy things with linking that in. And we are doing fancy things with Oracle guided learning. A little plug for my session from yesterday with Oracle. But if we don't have that fancy stuff, we say, hey, you know what? We want to just skip the whole training thing in general and just make it really easy for people. Then we want to reduce this friction by moving towards some kind of conversational interface. If you think about it more generically in the finance side, anytime a user needs to pick up the phone and ask for help, this is maybe a basic question. The user, the person hearing, needs to understand what the person's doing. Again, matching to a dialogue flow. Even this is a human, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to match to a dialogue flow. You're asking for X. Let me go to my algorithm, my process to help you with X, right? When that's a person, you're dealing with human issues, right? And that can create a lot of friction. And generally, this not only takes a lot of time for the person answering the question, you have to, and as an organization, you have to staff with people to answer those questions, but the people that are asking the question feel like this is not really a great use of their time either. And it ends up being kind of a situation with a customer service situation. So, this is unfortunately the way it's always happened traditionally. So, if you think about the conversational interfaces, the changing demographics and expectations of the workforce. I mean, if we think about the fact that millennials and Gen Z currently make up a third of the workforce, but really that's moving to 50%, and eventually it'll be more, and it'll just keep growing. And as the younger generation comes through the organization, not only are they going to accept these types of chatbots, but they're going to expect them. Okay, that's a key sort of shift here. It's very important to point out that in most other cases of interaction with their applications, they're not making a distinction between work applications and life applications. They're expecting to have an easy process and something that doesn't require a human to interact with. So chatbots are going to be, they're here, they're going to be more important as we go. So if we think about, what PeopleSoft, what Oracle's doing with the chatbots, we're still in an evolutionary state, but we've moved to now one chatbot to rule them all, one digital assistant called the Picasa, PeopleSoft Intelligent Chat Assistant for Oracle. It incorporates these 5 chatbots. And if you're savvy and you know how this works, 4 of these relate to the HR side of the house, and 2 of them relate to the financial side of the house. So when you're setting this up, if you have both pillars, HCM and financials, you can set up just like you can with unified navigation. You can set it up so that that one chatbot or that one digital assistant, Picasa, can exist on both financials and HR, and can take you over to the other one depending on what you're asking of Picasa. If you're saying, you know what, I want to look up my expenses, you're going to be moving over to the financial side. You say, you know what, I actually just need to put it some time in because I'm going to have some time off or something. Then you're moving back to the absence side. So that is fairly seamless. The chatbot, the Picasa chatbot, exists as this little icon down here in the bottom right part of your screen that you can see here. And by clicking on that, it's going to bring you into the Picasa chatbot. And you'll notice that not only does it recognize, who I am and want to treat it like a real conversation, but it says, here are the available chatbots. Now, this makes it pretty easy to kind of scroll left and right through the different chatbots here. You can see an expenses one. I could scroll left and go back to benefits or absence or whatever. So I can sort of just navigate through that. Chatbot is not solely this blank screen and you have to know what to type. It actually can be both. It can sort of, if you know what you're looking for and you type in expenses, or if you type in where's my monitor, where's my requisition, it can understand that type of thing and take you right into the correct chatbot. But sometimes we see that this is actually helpful for people just to see, okay, here's the available chatbots and here's some things that I can do with that chatbot. It's a little bit of training and rewiring your brain from the traditional model where you have to know where to go and you have to kind of think about what I want to do before I go do it. This is sort of trying to change that paradigm a little bit to say, did you know here's some things that you can do. In expenses, you can look at your expense reports for last month. You can look at expense reports the last week. You can see your recent ones. On the requisition side, you can look up requisitions that are still pending approval. You can see who actually is, whose queue is that actually in. So I can go knock on their door and ask them, hey, can you approve that requisition, right? So these are some things that are sort of presenting to you as a user and makes it a little bit easier to work with. There are a couple additional chatbots that are available on the HR side called for payroll and recruiting. And there's some additional chatbots that are coming, and I'll talk just to those at the end of this presentation. So there are some minimum requirements to get to for chatbots. We're going to try not to go too technical on this session because we don't have a ton of time. But you do have to have this link to Oracle Digital Assistant. Okay, so you've got your Oracle PeopleSoft, and it can sit on-prem or it can sit on a cloud, whether that's Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, AWS, Azure, private cloud. Doesn't matter where your PeopleSoft sits. ODA, Oracle Digital Assistant, will be a cloud-based subscription that you can subscribe to. And that digital assistant has the natural language processor. It has the logic of how the dialogue flows and where all your messaging goes to and it routes through. So there's this sort of interaction and connection between your PeopleSoft, which can be on-prem, into ODA. ODA sort of translates it, says, okay, here's what I'm looking for. ODA is going to send it back into PeopleSoft and say, here's a specific query of data that I need, right? It might be, where is my requisition? It's saying, okay, this one requisition number, I'm looking for, the status on it and who is specifically, whose queue is this in from a approval perspective. It sends that data back to ODA. That bits of data that came from PeopleSoft is being translated into a conversational response, and that conversational response is going back into the chatbot in PeopleSoft. So there's a loop. PeopleSoft to ODA, ODA PeopleSoft, PeopleSoft back to ODA, ODA back to PeopleSoft. That's the loop that happens. In order to do this, so you have to have that Oracle Digital Assistant, which does cost you, and I've got some sample pricing in the back here. I'll point out list pricing, not discounted, but you can get discounts and some big discounts on the stuff. But you need PeopleTools 857, 07 or higher. You need to be on a functional image. For financials, that image is 33. And you can do selective adoption for some of this stuff, but it's a little bit challenging. So you got to consider that you need to get to a minimum level of 857 and PI 33. Okay, so there are also a path to doing the chats through text messaging. So for that, additional requirements, Twilio account, and like some additional levels on your image on the functional side. And there's this Microsoft document that you can check out if you want more information on that. Okay, so the chatbot integration framework, which comes in 85707, comes with several things. One is the PeopleSoft config updates. There's an install package for your web server, which again, I'm not going to get into technically. And then there's the skills that allow you to import from Oracle Digital Systems. So that's part of the chatbot integration framework. That's why you have to get to 85707. That's where it sits. On the PeopleSoft image side, then you've got the app services core, app services that are basically a function of saying when I said, hey, here's this request, I need to get the data out of PeopleSoft, that's the app services. So it's basically connecting the dots and saying, okay, I'm looking for some bits of data. The app services goes in, gets it, and sends it back out. So for example, extraction of absence information or requisition data. And then you've got enterprise components. So set up pages in the enterprise components that have things like chatbot branding, all that kind of stuff is all based in there. And then of course the chat client, that little ... that has to sit, some code that actually has to bring that to your PeopleSoft environment. Here's a quick view of the app services and a little example of the one that says get employee balance. Again, this is delivered. If you get to that minimum PeopleTools level, if you get to that functional image, these things will just be there. They're available to you. There's not a lot you have to do with them. You don't really touch them. They're just there delivered. If you want to make modifications, which I'm going to show you here in a second from ODA perspective, you can do that. These things generally don't need to modify, but if you're going to build your own chatbots, then you would want to create your own app services and build that out to say, oh, I need to get this new bit of data, whether you have a bolt-on and you want to go grab that data, or if you want to, maybe do some data that doesn't already come in a delivered app service. So you can build your own. Okay, and here's just a quick view of, the walkthrough of that specific app services wizard on the get employee balances. So I'm going to move through this integration framework pretty quickly. You have a web SDK for the chat client. That's the technical piece that goes on your web server to connect the dots for your chat client. And then you've got ODA, which is really has all the skills. So let's take a look at that really quickly with ODA. In Oracle Digital System, against a SaaS application that sits out there on Oracle Cloud, basically, and it allows you to then import skills. So these are the skills that PeopleSoft is developing. They're putting them into the marketplace onto the ODA platform, and you get to basically subscribe to them and pull them out, okay? And say, I want to use this new benefits assistant. I want to use this Picasa. I want to pull this out, and I want to bring it in. It has all of, so additional skills. In each skill, it has intents, entities, and workflow and dialog flows. These are specific concepts from the ODA side. And we do have training, which I'll just plug really quickly. We do have training on all this stuff, as well as some other services around chatbots that I'll talk to you in a second. So all these skills are there available for you to take. You don't have to take all of them. You can select which ones you want to take. And what you're doing is you're pulling each one of those and you're bringing that into your PeopleSoft environment to be able to be used. In general, you don't need to do a lot with these. You can just use them out of the box, but really to make it personal to you, we encourage you to consider updating some of the intents, which I'll show you here in a second. And here you can see, once you sort of go into one specific skill, you can not only just use it, but you can also clone it if you'd like to create your own version of it. Just note that when you do clone it, it's like cloning a delivered object in PeopleSoft. You're kind of off the range, and when they get updates, that delivered object gets updates, you're not getting them under the clone model. So the better way to do it is to extend it, which allows you to sort of overlay your changes, and then when changes are brought from PeopleSoft or Oracle side, you get to basically just rebaseline and update to the latest, and it sort of merges your changes with theirs. So here you can see a quick example of what that, when you get into a specific skill, here this being the absence balance one, you can see there's a whole sort of process to manage the intents, dialogue flows, etc. This is a quick view of the intents. And then here is a quick view of the flow editor. So this is not something that you're going to take a functional person and say, oh, go figure it out, right? This is a developer function. If you want to go figure out what's happening here, you want to make modifications to it, you want to build your own, you definitely need skills with respect to programming, JavaScript programming, that type of thing to do this. It's not something a business analyst is going to go do, okay? So just be clear about that. Updating intents, very easy to do. Updating flow editor, you need a developer, okay? So what does ODA do versus PeopleSoft? So ODA has a natural language processor. It's got the ability to, creates a channel that creates a connection between that ODA instance and your PeopleSoft. It has the conversational logic, the dialogue flow, and it has the connectivity. PeopleSoft has, of course, the source data. It has the underlying application logic using the application service framework. That's sort of how to get the data out, right? And then you've got a user interface for accessing the chatbot, that's a little chat client, and then the dialogue messages, okay? So let's do a quick little demo here. This is, I'm gonna skip the absence one just due to time, and we'll go straight to the requester bot. So, and in fact, you know what, instead of this, actually, let me just go straight into PeopleSoft and just show you that. Hold on one second. Let's see. Okay, so here we've got, I'm going to be logging in as a sample user. And you can see that this little chat client is going to pop up here for me, and I am, I can do anything. I can go to procurement, I can find my requisition if I wanted to, but if I want to just keep it simple, and if I'm kind of such that I don't want to click around, I don't want to, find something on the menus or whatever, I'm going to just click on this. You'll notice this Picasa window has popped up here. It's greeting me and it's telling me these are the things that I can do. And you'll notice here again that Picasa delivers these chatbots that are spanning both HCM and financials. So I'm going to move over here to, and as I mentioned, we have expenses inquiry. So this is an expenses chatbot that again can be deployed on its own, but here I've got it incorporated into Picasa. And again, there's no additional pricing for that. Once you go to the ODA, you get access to all this stuff. So it makes sense to use Picasa. I'm going to move to the requisition. I'm going to say, show my pending items. So again, I could type this in, or I could just click the buttons, right? Regardless of what I do, it's basically by pushing those buttons, it's actually just sort of streamlining the process of getting me into a dialogue flow that says, okay, you want to know about your pending items. I'm going to present your pending items. Here you've got 3 pending items. I'm going to see, okay, actually I wanted to know about this one right here. And I can ask for more information. I could interact with from a conversational perspective, or I can just click the button, show me transactional detail. And here I've got my information. So you'll see how it says show transaction details. So by pushing the button, I'm basically just streamlining or automating the entry of, I could have said show transaction details, but I'm just clicking the button. It's just pre-populating that phrase, basically, show transaction details, and it's bringing back information about that requisition. And here I can see that, okay, Kenneth Schumacher is the person that's got this hold up, and I want to, I'll need to go talk to him or whatever. I actually can also just say, take me there, and it will then just automatically bring me over into that transaction, into PeopleSoft. So it's just, again, it's a very easy way, and I could get this information without having any idea about how to actually get there in PeopleSoft using traditional methods, nav bar, tiles, nav collections. I may not know how to do any of that stuff, but I can interact with the chatbot and I can get to what I'm looking for. So we've got a great delivered options with requisition and expenses. And as I mentioned, we'll talk through a couple other ones here in a second. All right, so let me, I'm going to minimize that and let me move on past the demo stage because, like I said, we're short on time. So quickly here, I'm just going to show you real quick. This is a way to add an intent. You'll see that the entry greeting, it didn't actually have help in the delivered one that I'm just showing you right here. So I'm adding help to it. You can add other, contextual information for your organization that you want to have people be able to say, and you're going to match that to a specific dialogue flow, here being an entry greeting. And the entry greeting is going to say, oh, welcome, what would you like to do? And then it takes them to the next thing, which is, you're looking to request an absence, blah, blah, blah. So you're adding these what's called intents to get people or get the ODA piece to be a little bit smarter to understand what people are looking for. At this point, there's no AI that sort of updates ODA behind the scenes based on what people are saying and then where they're trying to go. There's no AI associated with it. It's still a manual process to go in and update this stuff. But once you update it, once I put in help, it's there forever, and it will help people know that they should be going to, in this case, the entry greeting. Okay, I'm sorry I'm moving pretty fast on this, but here I want to show you one more thing, which is some stuff is actually handled in PeopleSoft. I mentioned earlier that the messaging is still handled from PeopleSoft. Here, and I know this is a little bit of code, but I was able to say in the entry greeting, I can find this message set and catalog, right? So I'm looking at this and say, okay, I can go back into PeopleSoft and I can find that message catalog and set, and I can make a modification to it. So by coming in here to this message, I can actually contextualize it. I can put in specific email address. I can, put in a specific phone number. I can brand it the way I want to brand it using messages. And those message catalog and sets, as you know, are in PeopleSoft, not in ODA. So it's the sort of interaction between the ODA back into PeopleSoft. Okay. So getting into my time here. So you can build your own. There's a template to build your own. In order to do that, you're going to need some understanding of app services. You're going to need some developer skills to develop an ODA. You also can just sort of rebase, as I mentioned, for the existing skills that are out there. You can simply just rebase. Okay, future chatbots. So these are in the roadmap on the planned features. I don't have any insight as to when they may come, but we feel these are two great scenarios and use cases for financials. Frankly, if they don't build supplier system one, we may have to just go build one ourselves, because this is a really key thing, especially for your suppliers who are coming into the supplier portal and they don't know how to click the buttons and know where to go. We would love to see a chatbot with that. We're very anxious to see this from Oracle on the supplier system side. Same thing with customer side, helping them move into check balance, make payments, and that sort of thing. So these are two that are in the roadmap. They should be coming. I don't have any insight as to when that's going to happen. The pricing, I'll just point out here that there are some different models for it based on total employees per named users. There's a fee per request. Key here is heavy discounts available. They're trying to steer you towards the app sales side, which is basically the per employee. It's going to be the easiest model to understand, to price out, to get discounts. You're going to go towards the Oracle app sales. I can help you guys connect the dots if you're wondering who that might be for you. I can help you with that. The tech rep would be helping the other side, but we're really trying to push towards the app side. So just a little bit of wrap up here. You've got quantitative considerations here for chatbots. You've got the time spent of your different service groups answering repetitive questions. And, you know, from quantitative perspective, ODA can be licensed as a platform, meaning the more chatbots you bring in, if you bring Picasa, bring all those chatbots in, it's going to make more sense from an ROI perspective because you're paying one time and you're getting access to all these different chatbots. From a qualitative perspective, you got to really think about your customer satisfaction, your users, as well as you know, the admin group. You know, so you've got your users and you've got your admin group who's sitting there answering these questions on a repeated basis. You know, how do you do that in a way that's going to help them feel satisfied and productive as well? And you really can expand the reach to groups of people that you probably wouldn't get to otherwise with traditional training and outreach to these groups. And of course, lastly, you can do multilingual support too. So we offer services from the whole gamut, whether it's just advisory at the beginning, just to have conversations. We do training with, you know, kind of a level 1, kind of some basic stuff, and a kind of a longer form training to get into a little bit more details. Obviously can help you deploy chatbots, and then of course we can help you maintain them going forward. So really we've got services across the board. That's what Spirit MC is doing in this space. Happy to have conversation with you guys. And I know I've gone over time and I apologize about that. I'm going to quickly switch over and here's my little conclusion. Chatbots are here. Try to increase both user and admins group satisfaction and leverage deliver chatbots with Picasa, but personalize it with utterances and messaging. All right. I apologize, I've gone over time. I'm going to look up to see if there are any questions. If there are any questions, feel free to put that in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any questions now. Again, thank you for going a little bit long with me. I'll hang around for a couple minutes if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, you can see my contact information here, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Logesh and I will work together with you to determine kind of what approach you'd like to take and how this might make sense for you as an organization. Happy to have those conversations. Any questions? Again, this was kind of like drinking through the fire hose, but feel free to grab up my presentation. It's not out there yet, but I'll put it out there, and you can go through a little bit slower if you'd like to get some more information. All right, I don't see any questions coming through. So appreciate everybody's time today. Hope you guys have had a great conference. Do you have a question from Pascal? If you have time and something support multilanguage, I would like to know if Chatbot is working on any other language than English. The answer is yes. And I actually, I don't have a ton of experience with this, but I did hear this morning from Joe Wong that you can do that. There's 2 different methods for that. There is both a translation services that you can leverage, that ODA leverages for translation basically, or you can actually just put it natively into the code or the messaging, right? So your messages you can put that into a different language, and then the intents, utterances can be using those other non-English languages as well. So yes, the answer is yes. Thanks for that question. Any other questions? All right, you can see my contact information there. Appreciate everybody's time, and have a great rest of the day, folks. Talk soon.